Occult Confessions is brought to you commercial-free through the generous support of our patrons. Visit occultconfessions.com and click on Donate to help keep the history of the occult on the digital airwaves.
Very excited, Rob.
Yeah.
Very excited
For
about
which
Cold
part?
War psychic spies.
Are you more excited for the Cold War, psychics, or spies?
Ooh. I'd have to say
Pick your fighter.
psychics, but I've always been a big fan of the Spy Museum in D.C.
Museum.
You just said museum. Oh, no, we're not doing this.
The Spy Museum?
No, stop
Super
saying
cool.
museum. That is incorrect. It is museum.
Is that a
I will
local
fight
thing?
someone.
Is that an
Ryan,
Eastern Shore thing?
I think
No,
it's like
there's
a
something-
Baltimore. Ryan
Yeah,
says
Baltimore.
museum. I hate it.
It's definitely a
hate
Baltimore thing. I was born
Triggered.
in Baltimore.
Were you?
Yeah.
What?
Well, you learned how to say museum there.
I guess so. I learned to say some other things there, too.
I was born in Baltimore too, and I say museum. Like,
Thank God that you're normal.
See, you're the exception that proves the rule. For roughly 20 years, the United States government, in the form of the Central Intelligence Agency and the military, endorsed the reality of out-of-body experiences and psychic visions. They developed counterintelligence measures to combat Soviet psychic spies and developed their own program for remote viewing, a technique for extending the mind beyond the limits of the physical senses to see faraway places, like military bases, crash sites, and nuclear submarines. Today, in the last installment of our Magical Warfare series, we're talking the Cold War's psychic spies.
is
Is that copyrighted?
No, I was just humming.
She just made it up. That's her own song.
Oh my God,
TM.
that was so good.
I did TM.
You TM'd.
That's like the metal riff, except for spies.
Da-na-na-na-na-na.
It's like borderline Batman.
It's less
I
than
think is
30
what I was
seconds, so even if it does appear elsewhere, I think we're covered.
Yeah.
Nice.
My name is Rob C. Thompson. I am the Supreme Hierophant of our Secret Order of Alchemical Actors and Doctor of Psychic Things.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's
I know,
That's
that's
at
weird.
the same time.
That's really weird.
psychic and occult things.
Sure.
But not spies. I'm not a doctor of spies.
What about psychics? Are you a
Well,
doctor?
they're
of?
like mediums. I studied mediums.
Yeah, you're right.
They're like psychics.
I'm just making sure you back up your criteria.
Mediums are first psychics and then mediums. So that's like the weaker of the two powers. 'cause-
Is this what you learned?
Yeah, that's what they said.
your
Yeah,
degree?
that,
Okay.
according to them.
All right.
I haven't proven or disproven that as a theory. This is Olivia
I just thought we would check.
interrogating me.
It's a spy episode.
Oh, that's
so I'm
true.
Feeling
You're feeling inquisitive.
Yeah, I'm interrogating you.
Olivia Literal
Spy.
is our master, grand master.
I am all of your master. Bow down. Hi.
All right. James Kaplanchis across the way here, who says museum.
I say
can't.
museum, but
I can't right now.
apparently it's museum, and I'm thinking about changing it because Olivia just keeps staring at me with hateful eyes.
I'm not.
Yeah, I'm captain of the table.
Yes, table captain.
Yes.
Not in museums.
Yeah.
And Savannah Verrett is here because we're talking about the Cold War, and who again ended the Cold War?
Ronald Reagan.
Ronald Q. Reagan.
But I'm only here because of that, not because you guys like me.
But we like you, yeah, but
Sure.
we like the
Yeah.
thematic connections better.
Well, okay. But actually, speaking of Ronald Reagan,
Yes.
I have something that I need to share with you guys, because I'm a little scared, but I think it'll be okay if I
Okay.
talk to you guys about it.
Fair
So
enough.
the other day, I was walking down the road, and a very, very tall man, very pale, dressed in all black, came up to me and handed me this tape recorder that I'm holding here in my hand.
Did this really happen?
Yes, it did.
This
You
is
met
wild.
a man in
And-
black?
Oh, a man. Oh, yeah. That's
that-
Man in
that
black.
what-
Yeah,
okay.
And
man in
he
black.
handed me this recording, and I went home and I listened to it, and it's mind-blowing, guys.
Are our confessors going to die if they hear this? Like the
No,
ring?
I'm
we
sure
putting
it's
people-
just me that's gonna die.
Oh, okay.
We're okay.
All right, well, don't worry
But
then,
you guys
confessors.
need to
You
hear
can
this.
hear this.
It's probably pertinent to today's information, so
ahead.
here we
Oh,
go.
Okay.
All of the birds died in 1986 due to Reagan killing them and replacing them with spies that are now watching us. The birds work for the bourgeoisie.
And that was the whole message.
Everything I've been trying to say on this podcast is slowly going to make sense.
But the bourgeoisie, like, that's not aiming very high.
We're
It's not like the
starting at communist
0.01%.
standards.
Yeah, like, that's like bourgeoisie.
If you went to private school, you know all the birds are fake.
What? Didn't you go to private school?
Yeah, I never learned that.
I went to private school at one point. I don't.
No,
We, the members of the secret
Order
order of alchemical actors,
do
do
solemnly
solemnly commit ourselves to a full and honest telling of the history of the occult as far as we know it. A number of our listeners just went, whew, I'm glad that's over. They were just waiting for me to do that. Sorry, I know it was abrupt.
Get your reviews ready. Oh, can I not say that?
I needed it.
Oh, okay.
No, I've had enough of that
I'm
nonsense.
just trying to help raise ratings with these unbelievable
Conspiracy theory.
things. No, it
Oh.
was given to me by the Men in Black. Obviously,
He
it's
was
real.
pale, Rob.
We've got people listening right now who are starting to get panicked. All right, so looking at the bird out
Alien
the
human
window.
hybrids are out there.
All right, we are not that podcast. Those podcasts. Let's talk about our sources today because we have those. Because we're not one of those podcasts, and our sources, I guess, must now include a Man in Black.
Yeah, we have
Or-
to source that.
or YouTube.
That tape.
Joseph McMonagle's Mind Trek. F. Holmes Atwater's Captain of My Ship, Master of My Soul.
Oh.
Jim Schnabel's Remote Viewers, The Secret History of America's Psychic Spies. So those are our main sources for today. I did collect as many books as I could from actual Cold War psychic spies, and all of these books, except for Schnabel's, are by actual Cold War psychic spies.
Schnabel isn't a. He doesn't have the name for it.
He's like a journalist.
Yeah, it definitely has
yeah.
a journalist name.
F. Holmes Atwater, right? Like there's a
That's
guy
a
who
good
worked
name, yeah.
who worked in Secret Ops.
There we
Okay,
go.
let's talk. Oh, we're in the plugs, by the way.
Plug, plug, plug!
I was late.
Well, you didn't. You literally just told
I
me we
didn't
were in the
mention it
plugs.
because we were talking about birds. I was all thrown off. Let's talk about our Patreon.
Maybe that
Wait.
was a plug. The Men in Black.
The sources count as a plug. Okay, so let's talk about our Patreon. We want to thank Nicholas F. for joining us on Patreon.
Thanks, man.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Nicholas.
Thank you.
Watch out for those birds.
They're not real, evidently.
So don't worry about it.
Yeah.
And now Jenica C. also joined us on Patreon, but I've got to go a little bit further with Jenica here because she also connected with us on Instagram. Olivia, I'm going to
yeah.
toss this over to you here because she gave us an update on reptilians that I just want to slide on into our 3 plugs today. She said, or she sent us an article. Apparently, a man who belonged to a cult that believed in reptilian apocalypse committed suicide by giving his girlfriend a loaded gun, pointing it at himself, and then pulling the trigger. Olivia, we're gonna tease our audience here. We're gonna let Olivia respond to this at the end of the episode.
I'm gonna tease ya.
I just want to plug today's voice impersonators, our alchemical actors Brandon Walls and Sean Priest. We usually talk about them at the end of the episode, but I need to point out, because some of the people who will be impersonating today are alive, that they are our actors playing them. They're not actually the people.
Oh.
We always do that. But usually everybody's dead, so we don't have to tell you that we did
Oh,
it. You know?
it's like,
Yeah. But now we have to say it because people are alive.
guess we do cover a lot of old shit. Everyone's dead. Can I say this?
That's a way to say it. Yeah.
Oh. Anyway.
Let's get started. Ingo Swann was an artist who had first made contact with the scientists Harold Puthoff and Russell Targ at the CIA-backed Stanford Research Institute in 1972, also known as SRI.
Those names are all ridiculous. Just
You and the names.
tell me those
Got
names
a
do
name
not sound
thing.
fake.
He'd impressed Puthoff by altering the output on a magnetometer buried inside a concrete wall, which he did by attempting to get a psychic grip on it.
What is this sentence?
But he
What
did it.
happened?
Okay, so Ingo Swann goes to the CIA.
Tell me that name. Just
He's a psychic artist. What else do you want his name to be?
he changed his name. That's all I want to know.
So he goes to the CIA's SRI, the CIA-backed SRI, and he makes this magnetometer buried inside a concrete well. Did I say wall? It's in a well.
Yeah.
He makes it move using his psychic grip.
But what is a magnetometer?
I imagine it measures magnetic things.
How far are we talking that it moved? Like across the room, or like it
I think he
shook?
moved. It's like a dial. He moved the dial on the magnetometer.
Oh.
Yeah. So he'd served in the Korean War, and after Ingo did, And after leaving the army, see, he's a veteran. Be nice to him. He moved to Greenwich Village, where he began earning his living as a subject in parapsychology experiments.
Oh.
Yeah, so he made his money going around, trying to guess the symbols on cards.
Oh, like in Ghostbusters.
Yeah, like in Ghostbusters. His work in the SRI lab wasn't especially fruitful at first. He hated Targ's light bulb machine, comparing it to the early card-guessing experiments popularized at Duke University by J.B. Rhine in the 1930s, and by this we're talking about the
Ghostbusters?
the Ghostbusters stuff, yeah. So, that's all real, by the way, yeah. Most of Ghostbusters is actually based, at least loosely, on actual stuff.
Wow.
I mean, not Marshmallow Men and stuff. Anyway. The SRI lab was interested in developing a way to use psychics for long-distance spy operations.
Was that their main objective?
Yeah.
Cool.
It's not anymore. It's still there. The SRI lab is still there, and they
Really?
do a lot of cyber warfare and that kind of stuff.
Is this... never mind. This is off question.
What's interesting... well, we'll go into it. Well, let's just do this right now. So what's interesting, actually, is that both the SRI lab and the NSA... The NSA is... Do you know where the NSA is located?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, it's right down Route 50 there.
It's in Fort Meade.
It's in Fort Meade.
Really?
In Maryland, yeah.
Yeah, it's in the state of Maryland.
Oh.
Yeah, all of our cyber warfare is conducted from, like, right across the bridge.
Across the pond.
Yeah, across the bay. So both of those sites where we're conducting cyber warfare now and experimenting on cyber things are the sites of the things we're going to talk about today.
Oh my god, that's
They were
really weird.
they were the centers of psychic warfare in the 1970s and 80s.
Is this around the time then that U.S. is like doing like all the LSD, like okay.
This is the MK
all
Ultra days
alright.
as well.
The
Yeah.
Stranger Things things.
It's sort of lingering after but yeah, it's all in the same.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, the CIA is doing all kinds of crazy stuff. So let's get back to Hal, who's not involved in MK Ultra.
Yeah, sorry.
He had started psi experimentation at Stanford when he'd earned his PhD. Both Hal Puthoff and Russell Targ were laser physicists. There it is.
Oh.
Puthoff had a patent on a tunable infrared laser, and Targ had worked in the research laboratories at Sylvania, which is a company that makes light bulbs. Puthoff had come to psi out of an interest in the intersection between psychic ability and quantum theory. See our episode on quantum consciousness, I guess.
Gear up for that one.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
It's a few seasons back. People have been through it. They've enjoyed already.
I'm sure it's just,
All right.
it's a lot.
Targ's early contribution as Puthoff's assistant was his ESP machine, his light bulb machine, and test subjects were asked to guess which of 4 hidden light bulbs, which were lighting up slides of artwork, were being illuminated. So Swan was highly successful at a technique he established for doing what the CIA had wanted all along, viewing remote targets otherwise difficult for traditional intelligence sources to investigate. Swan discovered that hearing the name of a site caused his imagination to intervene too much in the work, though. So if you asked him to see an Air Force base, for example, he would start imagining airplanes and hangars, rather than actually tuning in to the psychic vibration and getting real psychic impressions. You see what I mean?
That makes sense.
So we needed to find a way to get him to hone in on the location and do this remote viewing without telling him what the location was, because that would get his, imagination intervening rather than his psychic sense picking up on what it's supposed to be.
Wow.
You get the problem? Mm-hmm. Okay, so this is what Swan came up with. He suggested that Targ and Puthoff instead give him geographical coordinates to remote view.
Ooh.
So they would give precise coordinates and just hand them to him. Those are just numbers on a page. They don't have any associations, right? And then he would go to work. So Puthoff and Targ went to a large world map. They picked out coordinates and brought them to Swan to tell him what was there. Swan had 2 minutes to respond. So they would give him a set of coordinates, they would give him 2 minutes, and then they'd move on to the next set and compare based on the geography to see if Swan was correct. So they're just doing this now with a map.
Right.
How is his impression relate to where the map says we are? He
2
sees,
minutes?
huh?
I was just thinking 2 minutes doesn't sound like a whole lot of time to do that.
I think in part, it's like surrealist poetry. The goal is to not think too much,
I was about to say,
that
it
makes
keep you
sense.
moving.
This was also an experiment,
Yeah,
not like how they're going about receiving this information.
right. So scientifically, we want as much data as possible. So running through it quickly helps with that as well. So he'd see ice in Greenland, he'd see sand in North Africa, beaches in Aruba, whatever. After 10 days and 100 coordinates, Swan was having an unusual amount of success, and Targan Puthoff wondered if he might have memorized an atlas.
Do you know what his success rate was?
They didn't list his success rate.
Was it like more good than bad, I guess? Like, did he... I'm just wondering. I guess you don't know. Sorry.
I don't know if it was north of 50%, but it doesn't need to be.
Yeah.
Because the odds of you guessing correctly
successes, yeah.
are pretty...
Or getting better
Small.
at it.
Right.
Without, like they said,
Yeah.
memorizing an atlas and just being like, oh, it sounds like the Sahara, but desert.
Yeah.
Argentina?
I want a bar graph. Or is that the graph I want, James?
I don't know.
You're tutor. I don't know.
You got to know what kind of graph you want.
I don't know what... Anyway.
Okay.
Let's get to the CIA. So Targ and Puthoff are like watching Swan do pretty well at guessing where these coordinates are. So they call up the CIA, like you can do if you're at Stanford. An agent who we'll call Bob. We have to call him Bob because
He's secret?
Well, my sources here don't actually name him yet. They give him a false name.
Secret.
Because he's CIA. So an agent we'll call Bob gave Swan the coordinates of a site that he got from his friend, who we'll call Dave.
Oh.
Bob didn't know himself what was at Dave's coordinates. Got me so far?
But probably something important.
Yes. So it's like if I went to James and I was like, give me the coordinates of some place that you know about that I don't know about.
Oh, okay.
And then I'm going to pass them to Olivia, who's going to remote view those coordinates.
Okay.
Got me? Okay. So Swan got the impression of a military base with missiles and something underground. Something...
I'm sorry. I'm just getting excited.
Something shaped like a flagpole, and something large and circular. They also enlisted the help of psychic Pat Price. They gave him the coordinates, and Price was one of the most gifted psychics at SRI. He brought back this description.
Oh, this is a different guy.
Yeah, so we've got Swan doing this, and Swan gets all these impressions, and then they've got multiple psychics, because it's the Stanford Research Institute, and they got psychics just, in drawers.
Is Price like a veteran of this place? Like, is he good?
Price has been
like...
around, yeah, and Price is one of like 2 or 3 guys who are the best of the best. Okay, so let's hear a little bit from Price.
I perceive that there's a peak area that has a large underground storage area. There's a road that comes up the backside of the mountains on the western slopes, fairly well concealed and deliberately so. It's cut under trees where possible. It'd be very hard to detect if you were flying over the area. Looks like a former missile site. The bases for launchers are still there, but the area now houses record storage areas like microfilm and other filing cabinets. As you go through the underground area through the aluminum rolled-up doors, the forest area are filled with those records. The temperature is cool and it's fluorescent lighted. Personnel, Army 5th Corps Engineer Major Sergeant Long on the desk placard on a gray steel desk.
So that's the level of detail that Price provided. I mean, that's a direct quote of the kind of information that Targ and Puthoff received from this guy. So Swan got a sort of like broad sense of things, but Price was super good. It was like he was sitting in this room seeing all this stuff. All right, so let me go back to Bob and Dave. Remember Bob and Dave? CIA agents?
Yes.
Okay.
I would watch their sitcom.
So Bob brought the description to Dave, who laughed at him and told him that the coordinates mapped to his summer cabin in the Blue Ridge Mountains.
Dave played a trick on him.
Yeah, Dave got him. The psychics had failed spectacularly. But Bob was curious that both Swan and Price, separately, had conjured images of a similar location. So he started asking around about the area to see if there was something hidden in the Blue Ridge Mountains, right around Dave's summer cabin, that might match the description, right? Because in the government, nobody talks to each other. So the CIA is not necessarily aware of all of the military's secret research facilities. Everything's on a need-to-know basis, right? The Pentagon came down on poor Bob like a ton of bricks, accusing him of being a Soviet spy. How had he known, they asked him, about the existence of their secret, mostly underground, Navy communications base? He had a hard time convincing them, although ultimately he did, that he'd gotten the information from a pair of psychics.
Wow.
Can you imagine being Bob?
No. That sounds awful.
Yeah, here comes this general calling you a Soviet spy, and you're like, no, it was the psychics.
Dave is just like, oh man, I'm sorry. Dave's like, oh man.
Dave is not making eye contact with Bob for a little while.
Dave's trying to keep his job.
In May 1978, Puthoff got a fax from the military. So back at the SRI lab, we're getting a fax. They were looking for a Soviet Tupolev 22 bomber that had gone down somewhere in Zaire. America hoped to get their hands on the wreckage to sift it for valuable information about the Soviet targets.
Zaire is they used to call the Democratic Republic of the Congo.
Oh, yeah,
Zaire.
James is our geography guy.
Yeah.
Thank you for
It's
that.
the Congo.
Okay.
We're in Zaire, also known as...
The Democratic Republic of the Congo.
Yes. And America's trying to get their hands on this Soviet plane that's gone down there to gather, whatever they can from it. So, spy satellites have failed to detect anything useless. So they call up the SRI.
Useful.
Useful.
You said useless. They failed to find anything useless?
Or useful. They failed in both regards. So they call up the SRI. And this guy by the name of Gary Langford is working there as one of their psychics, pulled him out of the drawer, and he detects a river in a jungle. He sees the plane partially submerged and sketches the location. Dale Graff, who's an Air Force physicist, had formed his own team of remote viewers, and one of his viewers created an overhead sketch that, combined with Langford's drawing, helped them to locate the aircraft. Jimmy Carter, president at the time, was briefed on the discovery, and he asked them how they got to it so quickly. And when he was told that the military had used psychics, he was like, okay.
Wow.
Yeah, Jimmy Carter's he's unflappable.
I mean, he was worrying about other stuff, right?
The economy and gas prices and stuff, and the fact that he was not going to get reelected. So remote viewing had achieved a presidential level of acceptance at that point.
Oh man, if only we were there today.
Right? We could remote view so many things.
Yep.
I still kinda
I have
can.
a list of things that I want to remote view. I just can't because Trump says no.
Right.
So
Trump took our psychics. Well, it was like the 90s. Then Clinton took our psychics. All right. It could have been Bush. So at the time...
Who took our side?
We'll find. I've written this episode, but I don't remember. So we'll get there at the end.
Cool. It's a
Thank God.
surprise.
It'll be a surprise for everyone,
I
including
need
me.
closure.
At the time, the Defense Intelligence Agency (DIA) was taking an interest in remote viewing, and the CIA, Central Intelligence Agency, was losing interest. So the military is trying to pick up where the CIA is leaving off. The CIA believed the results of remote viewing were neither strong nor consistent enough to keep up their relationship with Puthoff and Targ and SRI. Super psychics like Pat Price were rare, and so a remote viewing program would require developing ordinary citizens' abilities, which would take years of research. So, we're only relying on a few guys. We can only remote view so many places. We got to create a whole army of remote viewers if we're really going to make this a thing.
You gotta mass produce it.
So it's not going to work out so well. So the CIA is unwilling to invest any further in remote viewing. Luckily, the DIA, the military, is interested in picking right up. And they organized the disparate remote viewing efforts under a single code name, Grillflame. So there was Dale Graff in the Air Force, and there were these different pockets of remote viewers, and they pulled them all together under Grillflame.
Grillflame.
oh wow, that's the most American thing I've
Right?
ever heard.
Right. Especially for the 4th of July, right?
Yeah.
This is our 4th of July episode, more or less. Our 5th of July episode.
Were they
but-
all dads?
They were like, let's get cooking.
They probably were.
Let's heat things up.
They were mostly dads. So the work was initially labeled Gondola Wish,
What are these?
which
How'd
does
they
not
go
sound
from-
very American.
No.
I like
Grillflame.
Gondola Wish.
And then they moved it to Grillflame, and then Center Lane, and then Starburst, and finally Stargate. Those are all the code names for the remote viewing program over the years. Stargate.
Starburst?
Starburst.
Then they got copyrighted by Starburst, and they had to
Yeah.
change it.
Said TM.
Right. I don't really know the history of Starburst, so Stargate.
So that's canon.
Yes, we've just established it. Now, Occult Confessions has established the official history of Starburst.
Like someone was like, let's call it Starburst. And then everyone was like, Gary, shut up. Like,
Because it's the military. He's
Yeah.
like surrounded by 5-star generals, and for some reason he's
Yeah.
in the middle of the table making starburst motions with his hand, making
Oh,
jazz
yeah.
hands and saying Starburst. I think that the popular name is really Stargate, and I think that's
Yeah.
what you would Google if you wanted to
Once
Google
you
it.
said that, I was like,
So Lieutenant F. Holmes Atwater believed that he was personally destined to start a program in remote viewing for the United States military. And in fact, seems like he was. So Atwater had first read about remote viewing in the book Mind Reach, which was written by our SRI scientists, Targum Putov. In 1977, he had just been assigned to the Intelligence Corps when his commanding officer asked him specifically what he'd like to do. He told the lieutenant colonel that he'd like to look into the counterintelligence implications of remote viewing, and eventually wound up at Fort Meade, in our home state of Maryland. He was assigned a desk that had belonged to a Lieutenant Colonel Sotko, and given the first task of cleaning it out.
What did he find, Rob?
I'm glad you asked, James. In his bottom drawer, he discovered 3 reports issued by the Army Surgeon General, who was apparently at this time was in charge of parapsychology. And these were on Soviet parapsychological research.
he just left these in his.
Just left them.
Okay.
So, one report estimated that the Soviets were conducting research into telepathy and telekinesis in as many as 20 different facilities at a cost of around $21 million a year.
Holy crap.
Whoa!
Yeah, the Soviets were way into... Now, we don't know if this was true or not, but the Army believed that they were investing $21 million a year into this. So, let's talk a little bit about the Soviet experiment, shall we? 'Cause
Okay, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I need to warn you.
Oh.
It's going to get dark really fast with
We're
the
here.
Soviet experiments.
Yeah.
Okay, one story told of communication between a submarine and psychics. Soviet parapsychologists bragged of being able to disrupt other psychics' communications. So you could interrupt the remote viewing of other psychics.
Psychic war.
Yeah, psychic warfare, yeah.
Didn't something like that happen in a previous episode? Was it?
Recently, we talked about someone in psychic warfare.
Well,
was
we
it
just did
called
Dion Fortune. She did psychic warfare.
Oh,
That's
that
what
was
it
what it
was.
was.
Okay.
It was like.
Because they would all sit in the house and, like, stop people from bombing
Yeah.
their house and stuff.
Get that Nazi group mind
Yeah.
all
Oh,
cleaned
that's
up.
right. They did say that they believe that they helped bring Hitler down, right?
So Dion Fortune sets up the sort of precedent for us to conduct psychic, interruptions. All right, let's get to the gross stuff. Soviet parapsychologist Eduard Nomov described an experiment involving, none of you are ready for this, bunnies.
Oh.
No.
The mother rabbit had electrodes implanted into her brain, and her babies were taken out to sea and underwater in a submarine while she remained on shore in a lab. At an appointed time, the bunnies' necks were snapped to see if there would be any psychic response in the mother rabbit. They repeated the experiment torturing kittens also with electroshocks.
Stop.
Okay, now we have to bear a couple
sad.
of things in mind about this. It is a sensational story, but we are also in a period where villainizing the Soviets is pretty standard.
Well, that is true.
So, I mean, the cold dead eyes of Vladimir Putin, like, maybe they really are. Maybe the KGB really is this rough, but maybe it's just American imagination about, the enemy.
Like, why bunnies and kittens?
Right, this is the most incendiary report you could possibly conjure. Like, puppies is the only thing
I was about to
left
say
out
puppies
here.
Yeah.
is too far.
Yeah.
The public cannot
Could
take
not
it.
do puppies.
Did they figure anything out?
Apparently, they figured out that they should spend $21 million on continuing these activities.
That rabbit was a really good psychic, I guess.
I was about to say.
Another of the reports Atwater found, or so our guy who's founding this defense military program, detailed the work of a Project Stargate, researching the military uses of remote viewing. This research had been conducted at the SRI, again with Targum Putov, who, as you'll remember, that's how Atwater got into this in the first place. He read their book. So for this guy, he's sitting at this desk, he's reading about these bunny experiments, and he's also got this report from these 2 guys whose book he read and who he thinks are super cool. He's already their super fan, and their report is right on his desk. So his commanding officer told him that the general in charge, General Ed Thompson, no relation, had been interested. There's a lot of
most
Thompsons in the
common
world.
last
Yeah,
name.
well, Smith.
No, yeah.
We're second. Had been interested in maybe Johnson. So General Ed had been interested in remote viewing, and told him to keep the documents on hand. So that's why Satko hadn't given them away or gotten rid of them or shredded them. It's because the general in charge was like, no, I think there's something to this. So you keep those.
In the bottom drawer.
Right.
Of your desk that you're going to leave behind.
For the next guy
Who I'm going to tell to clean out your desk.
who is destined to start this program, we'll find.
What if he just missed them? Like he just didn't clean up the desk.
Got everything but those.
There's an alternate universe where that did happen,
Oh.
and we wouldn't have this podcast. So.
Right. We wouldn't have this episode anyway. Next, the U.S. Army Missile Command at Redstone Arsenal in Alabama requested support from Operation Security, and Atwater joined as the junior member of the team sent to assess their security risks. They conducted their investigation and gave their report. Things like whether it was possible to fake an ID badge and sneak into the site, and whether their NASA display made them vulnerable to intelligence threats masquerading as tourists.
That all sounds probable.
Your basic... So this is what they did. They went
But not
around and did
against-
these.
But not against psychic infiltration.
Now, okay, now here, this is the interesting thing, James. At the end of the briefing, one of the project managers at the Missile Command
In Alabama.
in Alabama pulled a book out of his bag, demanding to know how Operation Security intended to help him against this threat. The book was Mind Reach by our SRI researchers, talking about psychics. And the threat was remote viewing by the Soviets.
Awesome.
So this guy goes on this trip to Alabama to help with these perfectly normal things, like security threats, and while he's there, one of the Alabamians, I don't know,
True.
what do you, anyone, any guesses?
I liked all of them.
Those were all correct.
I think it should just be all of it.
Alabamanians.
Yeah.
But the guy was in the military, so he definitely wasn't from Alabama. He just happened to be there at the time.
Right.
Anyway, he's asking about this stuff. This is wild. Like this series of coincidences for this one freaking guy.
Right.
It's out of this world. He's now come across this problem of remote viewing 3 times. Once when he's reading before he even gets the job, it's in his bottom drawer, and now this guy in Alabama who knows nothing
On
about his
assignment.
bottom drawer is asking about it.
Who knows nothing about his problem?
I'm not going to go there. Atwater took his story back to his commanding officer, a man named Major Keenan, and he said they needed to get to work on this issue straight away. The only way to assess an intelligence threat under the circumstances was to attempt to breach security at the Missile Command using remote viewing. So he gets this request, help me deal with this, and he's like, okay, we'll just psychically infiltrate your suit, because that's all they were doing, right?
Yes.
Is trying to see how people could infiltrate. So now they're going to attempt to psychically infiltrate the Missile Command in Alabama. So there were trained remote viewers at Stanford who could have made the attempt, but none of these people had security clearances necessary to determine whether and to what extent the Missile Command security had been breached. So
Makes sense.
they didn't have security clearance to psychically
Infiltrate.
infiltrate.
So, wait. So
Space.
they didn't have the clearance in case they got information, like they weren't supposed to have that information, or
just to
just to
confirm.
verify.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, Atwater told Major Keenan the Army would need to train some of its own remote viewers with the appropriate security clearances to this job, and see to future ones. Keenan was on board, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
all
what else
on
are
board.
you doing?
The general's on board, the major's on board, everybody can't wait to have psychics in the Army. And so was his commanding officer, a man by the name of General Smith, who approved funding for the project, and it finally received the blessing of the top guy, General Thompson, at the Pentagon. Wow.
So he gave him clearance.
Yeah.
You know they're all just saying to each other, well, you know what the Soviets are working on.
Right.
These bunnies.
We gotta get in here.
If they can do it, we should be able to stop it.
We got to get some bunnies. It's true.
Yeah,
though.
it's true.
It's the fear of the Soviets and what they're doing. I mean, we went to the moon for that reason. There was nothing we needed there.
You know they're going there.
We might have went to the moon.
Wait, oh, come on. Atwater brought in the scientists Puthoff and Targ. They interviewed over 100 candidates to become remote viewers and narrowed them down to 12 and then 6. Many of these remote viewers were photo interpreters who spent their time analyzing photographs of enemy facilities to determine who was in them. This was in part because they had a more visual way of experiencing the world, and so they were in a better shape to... The word view is in remote viewing.
Right.
So these people, their job was to look at photographs that satellites had taken and determine if there were security threats there. So they're already in this habit. Now they just have to do it with their psychic sense rather than with their eyes. Pudov and Targ believed that there was no real way to train an individual to remote view, but rather that they were seeking out a psychic aptitude in these individuals. One of the first viewers was this guy, Joseph McMoneagle. In fact...
Is he an evil villain?
No, this guy is, like, the best.
Oh,
He's one of the best.
Better than Price?
He's up there. He's up there.
Cool.
Yeah, him and Price are up there. He was assigned code number Viewer 001. Yeah.
What?
McMoneagle had first developed his psychic capacities after a near-death experience when he collapsed during lunch while stationed in Austria. After this NDE, he developed enhanced psychic abilities and began to have out-of-body experiences. He detailed the process for remote viewing in his book, Mind Trek. So let's hear a little bit from Sean, giving us McMoneagle's take on remote viewing.
The remote viewer stayed at the lab and tried to report on the location of the outbounders. The outbounder or target person would use a single 9-sided die to determine a 3-digit number. The outbounder team would report to the keeper of the target pool and present the 3-digit number. They would be handed the double-wrapped, sealed, and opaque envelope with the identical number and then depart the building, going directly to the parking lot and driving away in any direction, but without opening the envelope. 30 minutes prior to the specified target time, the outbounders would then open the envelope and read the instructions written on the card within. They would arrive at the target as close to the exact time agreed upon as possible. Back at the lab, the interviewer would turn on the tape recorder, start the stopwatch, and simply ask the remote viewer to describe where she or he thought the outbounder was currently located. For 15 minutes, the remote viewer would give a verbal response, which was taped, or draw pictures of what she or he thought the target looked like. Afterward, the remote viewer, outbounder team, and interviewer would travel back to the target and spend 10 or 15 minutes together debriefing the viewer on the target.
Yeah, that team, the outbounder team, they were how many people?
A few.
Okay.
Yeah.
That answers all my
Handful.
questions.
There's a few. Okay.
Great.
That was the one. Now you know it. Now you
Yeah,
can.
now I'm good. Yeah, I'm all caught up.
An independent group was responsible for actually evaluating whether the remote viewer had successfully described a target. If a remote viewer worked on 6 targets, the independent judge would rank 6 packets according to how well they fit each target.
What is a packet? Hang
Yeah.
on.
What do you mean by a packet?
So the packet's got where you're going.
Oh.
The deets about
okay.
where you're off to. The goal was to get the correct packet linked as the top choice. You got me? So they ranked them according to... So you would write... So McMoneagle writes down, he psychically views, and he writes down all the details. And then they've got these 6 packets, and they compare his descriptions to the 6 packets, and they try to figure which ones are which.
Oh, okay.
And then they rank them according to which one is most like it. So
They
you
match
wanted to
them.
get the best matches.
Yeah.
Okay.
So McMoneagle described remote viewing as feeling like a feather going across his mind. Yeah. He started off writing in terms of symbols, learning as he went to interpret the symbols according to what the targets actually were. So, if he drew a triangle every time there was a church steeple, over time he'd realize that a triangle meant a steeple and interpret it that way.
That's kind of trancy.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
a little.
He's
know?
learning his own code that way.
That's kind of cool.
This opened his ability to go deeper and develop more detailed pictures as his skills enhanced. The need for symbols comes down to the fact that our conscious mind does not share a common language with our subconscious mind. Let's hear McMoneagle talk a bit about this.
What the mind does is different from what the brain does. The location of mind is not established, only that the brain is required in order to communicate with it. The mind is comfortable in the physical reality as well as the spiritual oblique or non-physical reality. Consciousness is like a sliding glimmer or speck of light that slips and slides throughout both realities. I believe the subconscious is the gateway to the great unknown, that it is the fertile ground from which the psychic information comes. It has access to all knowledge, all realities, all possibilities. The exchange of information between the subconscious and the conscious is the single filter which causes more problems than anything else with regard to understanding psychic information. Why? Because at the very threshold of knowing, communications seem to break down. There is no agreeable language between the consciousness and subconsciousness. No shared or common reference points.
So that stuff should sound a little bit like our consciousness discussions from Series 3, which we've already brought up.
Oh,
for good reason, yeah.
Plug.
Right?
It's so difficult talking about that stuff because it just hurts my head.
Yeah.
But I like it. but it scares me.
He's really thinking about consciousness the same way as Myers does from that series, where there's this sort of like dark pool of understanding, and our consciousness moves through it like a flashlight, illuminating different parts of it.
Or slips through.
Ah,
That's what he said, yeah.
Ever
He said
since-
slips.
elegant.
Ever since we've had that black pool discussion, there's a lot of times where I'm like, I don't know how to do something, so instead of doing it, I will just like stop and like go to sleep or do something else and then come back to it later.
How's that working out for you?
Sometimes it works.
Good.
It helped with Cthulhu a lot.
Oh, there you go.
So-
Art, yeah. When you're making art, I think it's a very useful tool. Mm-hmm. Or making math.
Yeah, I was going to say math.
We don't make that here.
So, remote viewers are often trained with Robert Monroe at his Monroe Institute in Virginia. Monroe,
He's got his own.
he got his own institute. He was a radio executive who developed audio technology, which he called hemispheric synchronization, that facilitated listeners' ability to have an out-of-body experience. So he put the headphones on you, and this is what he did for McMonigal and a lot of the different guys who were working with the DIA, because he was in the Blue Ridge Mountains. Basically, he's in Virginia, and they're only at Fort Meade, so it's pretty close.
Just on the other side of DC.
Right. So they would go down to train their remote viewing senses. So that's the subject of today's brief history.
Oh.
Ooh, yeah. We're going to be talking
We're
about
here.
hemispheric synchronization.
He did not pick an easy thing to say.
I was about to say, hemispheric
Sounds fancy.
He could have shortened that one.
If you want to make your
Hemisphere.
psychic craziness sound serious and scientific, use big words.
Hemsync. There we go.
It is hemsync. You're right. That's
Done.
already. We're going to get there. Hemisync,
Oh.
actually.
Is that what they end up saying?
Let's bring Brandon on over to do this brief history.
Brandon.
Oh, that was exciting. And he's here.
Hello.
All right.
Da-da-da.
Let's get to it.
All right.
Brief.
Olivia's like,
One Direction from the Grandmaster.
This one actually isn't very long, so it is actually a brief history.
No, it's fine.
good. Because my command is history.
Together.
A brief history of hemispheric synchronization. Robert Monroe began his career by designing a flight simulator. His interest in aviation led to the creation of a radio program meant to encourage children to take an interest in airplanes, and he went on to create his own radio production company.
I imagine it was like Thomas the Tank Engine, but with airplanes.
planes?
Yeah, with
That was a
plans.
thing. There was a show like
By
that.
this guy.
And they were way creepier than Thomas.
Those
was.
things were terrifying.
The company developed 28 programs, mostly radio dramas and quiz shows. Yeah. He became increasingly interested in the use of audio to influence consciousness, particularly the use of tapes to learn while sleeping. That took a very quick turn.
That's scary.
He went from quiz shows to to prepare for a quiz show. You can listen to tapes in your sleep.
Hemisync, or brain synchronization, was his major breakthrough, which he patented in 1975. How do you patent?
Damn.
1975. You have to finish the date, Brandon, before you ask a question.
Oh, fair enough.
1975. We know it now. Go ahead.
Yeah.
How do you patent a? Because it was like a series of tones.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It was like music,
Oh.
right?
But
But not.
what you patent is not just the music, but its use. So you patent the whole thing.
I see.
Like if you came up with a way to use a light bulb that nobody's done before, you could theoretically
Really?
patent it.
Yeah, or like Velcro that doesn't make noise.
Ooh.
Oh.
Did you do that?
No, I was in Garden State. Made loads of money, fictional money off of that though.
Go on, Brandon.
In a hemisync session, patients or clients wear headphones and a series of sounds induce a new pattern of brainwaves, which Monroe believed was the brain producing its own sound or binaural beats. A later study by the SPR comparing electromagnetic to air headphones demonstrated that it's actually the magnetic waves produced by the headphones rather than the sound that causes the change in the person's
Oh,
consciousness.
bummer.
Yeah, right. But at least there's still a change in your consciousness.
Yeah, that is cool.
Yeah.
The technology has been used for sleep induction as a learning aid and has even been successfully tested as a substitute for fentanyl in surgery. I don't want to get knocked out to just... No, I'd rather...
Beats?
To
The
beat.
beats?
Yeah.
It's probably safer than fentanyl.
Maybe, yeah.
But you might wake up during surgery.
Just go back to the beats, man.
They just put the headphones back on, just like, shh, it's okay, buddy.
All right, listen to the beats.
It is also known to induce altered states of consciousness, and members of Project Stargate, including McMonigal, were sent to the Monroe Institute to enhance their ability to accomplish remote viewing.
Nice.
And that's a brief history of hemispheric synchronization.
Oh, it was pretty brief.
Yeah,
that was pretty easy.
Yeah.
nice and brief. Also history.
So could you use this to, like, hypnotize someone in theory?
Yeah, I think so, in theory. But it really was used by these guys to pop out of their bodies and float around some spaces.
Or to make it easier for them to do it.
It just seems like that
Yeah,
could
but
be
they
so
would do
easily...
it while they were at the institute.
Oh.
Couldn't
Yeah.
this so easily be misused?
If it fell
So
into
many
the
things
wrong
could.
hands.
So many things could be misused. Like a fire extinguisher could very easily be misused.
I'm just thinking about, like, MK Ultra.
Go
Low-key.
on. So
And
what do you-
just
what do you
how...
mean? Oh, for like to like
I
control
mean,
the masses.
those people at first didn't know that they were gonna get fucked.
So you could
You know?
hemi-sync someone.
I'm just wondering if, like, people could have been doing stuff to these people and they wouldn't even know.
Well, let me ask you this, Rob. Is this something that's like ready available? Like, can
I have not tried to
go
get
find-
this, but I bet you could. I bet
As a
you could
scholar,
Google
maybe
it
you
down.
could.
If it's patented, like, if
If
they
it's
patented
patented,
it.
yeah,
You
might
could probably pay a few bucks and get a hemi-sync tape.
There might be newer versions of it.
They'll send you a cassette though, because it's from the 70s.
But then I need to buy a
They'll send you an
tape
8-track.
There might be a newer version.
I
I want to download a WAV
kidding.
file.
They got that on MP3.
Download a
Like,
WAV file. Okay. So, Atwater prepared a report on the question of defensive strategies against Soviet psychic spies. So now we're getting to defense, inter-spy conflict. He argued that the Soviets were in the habit of giving gifts to Americans, and that the gifts could be used by remote viewers as a target to focus in on to discover what else might be around the target.
It's a bad habit.
Oh.
So in other words,
Oh, like they give them gifts that are actually, like...
so let's say you're a Soviet, and I'm like, hey, Olivia,
Yeah.
Comrade.
I
Olivia.
am a Soviet,
I would call
yes.
her, I'm an American. And I would be like, on behalf of the people of Georgia, I give you this golden peach statue. And then you take it home and put it in your, like...
Oh, Georgia the state, not Georgia the country that is...
Oh,
where the
do they have
borders.
peaches there? Because
Russia.
it could be both.
And I'm like, honey, I don't know where
That does make
Georgia
good sense,
is,
so yeah,
so-
okay. Anyway, but I'm an
we have
American,
this cool
so I'm
statue
from...
in our living room now.
Now you have that statue, and in your living room you discuss secret Soviet things.
There's no way that this statue could have recording devices from Americans.
It doesn't
or
even need to.
psychic devices.
It is a psychic device, because then I would go to Savannah, my psychic, and I
Yeah.
would say, Psychic Savannah,
Yeah.
I want you to focus in on a golden peach.
Got it. Already did. Wow.
And she's in your room, and she's watching and seeing everything you do.
Yep.
But these are mundane items. They're not ordained in any special way.
They're
But
they're
unique
yes.
in the way that they can be
I see what you
located.
mean, yeah. They're like special, gifty things. But yes, they're totally physical objects.
So it just like doesn't even matter what it is. They can just use
As
anything.
long as the psychic knows what it is, they can hone in on it theoretically
Okay.
and see what's in the environment.
There's only one golden peach in the world, and it's in your
guess-
living room.
I guess that's what I was gonna counter is if
I would
it's
engrave
just,
it with your name, Comrade Olivia.
if it's just like normal objects that could be copied. You know what I mean? I guess that's why I'm wondering if it's like a specific thing.
Yeah, it is. It has to be a specific thing. Because I couldn't just be like, Savannah, focus on his borscht. Is there a T on
I was
borscht?
like, I don't
I don't even know what you're saying.
I don't even know what that
It's a
is.
thing that they eat.
Potato
I'm just
salad?
like, what if there's like 10 other houses
Focus
that have
on his
peach,
liquor cabinet.
gold peach statues?
It's so specific that it helps the psychic's mind attune to the area.
How many people do you know have a golden
Yeah,
peach?
I don't know
they're
what
really
people in
not going
Georgia are
to,
doing. I'm in
Well,
Soviet.
she's in Russia. She's
I'm in
thinking about
Russia. Yeah.
Not Georgia.
I'm Soviet. I don't know what Georgia is.
All right. Here was his other suggestion. He said, if the Soviets give you gifts so that they don't do the same thing, stick it in the garage.
They can't get to the garage.
Well, they can get to the garage,
Oh, it's-
but nothing's happening.
How about
there.
you don't have
just,
any
like,
talks in the garage.
Toss it into the sea or something. Like, why do you need
There's
to
tons
even
of
keep
stuff
it
I
at
want
all?
to see.
Toss
We
it
will
in.
listen to the fish tell their secrets.
Because when the Soviets come over for dinner and they're like, hey, where's that nice golden potato we gave you?
that we're definitely not using to psychically.
You have to be like,
conversations.
I tossed it into the sea.
See, I didn't realize.
Which
I
is
guess I
awful.
don't know history very well, but apparently we just had dinner with the Soviets during the Cold War.
Yeah,
Just
well,
like-
well, it's like diplomats and stuff, right? Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
The people that are worth listening to
it's
probably
awkward.
are.
Like, if you got my kid a gift and came over for dinner and you're like, so how's she liking that gift, that book I got her? And I tossed it into the sea.
They're using human nature and, like, politeness against you.
Right, yeah.
And they're just like, that makes a lot of sense.
Honey, we should fish that out of the ocean.
We always toss your gifts into the sea as well.
We could just say that it's like an American tradition. We throw everything that we love into the sea.
Oh, boy. I think they might see through that. Okay.
Oh, man.
He also suggested putting unusual objects inside potential targets to throw off remote viewers.
Wait.
I didn't even hear any
What?
of that.
Okay, so it goes like this. If a remote viewer was attempting to view, let's say, a missile silo, and James is the colonel in charge of the missile silo, and I'm Atwater, and I go to him, and I'm like, there are probably Soviets trying to psychically view your missile silo, so here's what you're going to do.
I'm going to put a bunch of random shit everywhere.
You're going to put up a bouncy castle right in
Yeah.
the middle of your silo. So then
Make it
Olivia,
incredible.
Comrade Olivia of the Soviet Psychic Spy Force, KGB, starts to remote view the missile silo, and she's like,
There's a bouncy house.
there's a
Excuse
bouncy
me, sir?
castle in the middle of this. And yeah, like, her boss is like, no, there's not. That's,
There's a clown passing by,
you damn psychics. Are you full of nonsense? This
We're
is
at a
nonsense.
carnival.
So Olivia herself would be like, oh yeah, I've probably screwed this up.
Yeah,
so
I'm
you
probably
win.
gonna die.
The missile silo remains secret because of the bouncy house.
That's so fun.
We
And
can't
you know,
see through the bouncy house?
You can
No,
see it.
You can see it.
It's not that the bouncy castle's not in your way. The fact that you're seeing it at all makes you feel like you're not actually seeing what you're supposed to be seeing.
It,
the
and
missile
it makes you
silo.
less credible.
Yeah, if there's a clown just sitting by the missile, you're
If
like,
you,
oh
like,
no, that's
pushed
wrong. I'm
through
probably at the
it-
circus here.
Could you get to... Anyway. You know what I mean? Can
You would
push
doubt
through
your
the
impression
illusion?
right away, though, and other people who hear about it. It's not an illusion. There's really a bouncy
Or-
castle in the missile silo.
Well, okay, yeah.
You'd have to be pretty confident in yourself that that's what you're seeing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the people, your boss would also have to be really confident in your
Right,
abilities.
Soviets.
and I'm sure the moment you start to like falter in yourself, that's when it all probably starts to fall apart, right?
Yeah, and your boss goes off
Yeah.
and kills a bunny.
You're probably not in control of what you share with
You made
them
me
or
kill a
not.
bunny.
Sends
Look what
it-
you did with your bouncy houses and your circus clowns.
I'll send the submarine out.
I will kill more bunnies.
I'll do it.
So in late 1978, General Thompson and others at the Pentagon and CIA began sending intelligence tasks to the remote viewers, such that their mission shifted from seeking intelligence weaknesses in U.S. targets to actually conducting offensive spying operations.
Finally.
Right? The next year, remote viewer Mel Riley accurately described and Joe McMoneagle accurately sketched part of a Chinese nuclear device when they were asked to hone their abilities into a target in Lop Nor. Intelligence officials did not, as a rule, rely on remote viewing data alone to make their decisions because it remained highly controversial.
That's good.
'Cause
that
psychics,
they
yeah.
acknowledge that.
But many solicited remote viewing data in order to reassure themselves of what they thought was at a given target and could verify in other ways. So they were like, we think there's a nuclear device here. And then the remote viewers are like, yeah. So they don't say that to the remote viewer, by the way. They don't come and be like, is there a nuclear device? They just say, what's there? And if they come back and say a nuclear device, it's confirming their suspicion.
Can
Oh,
that
that's pretty
information be used to enact things, though? Like, it can't, right?
Yeah, it's,
Yeah,
it's all about
theoretically.
information gathering.
Yeah.
So the more information you have, the better
Yeah.
off you are.
You know what's up. You know what the Chinese have got and what they're doing. Ken Bell, another psychic spy, pushed into the mind of a KGB operative, pushed into his mind, who had been arrested in South Africa. The CIA wanted to know what he was up to and asked the remote viewers if and how he was receiving and sending messages back and forth to Russia. Bell went inside his head and learned that the man carried a pocket calculator that he used to code and decode messages. He sent the information on and heard that the man had, in fact, carried a pocket calculator, but that was as far as they would confirm his report. So part of the problem for the remote viewers is that they would get these impressions, but then their sources, I mean, their partners, whoever was asking them for the information, would never be like, yeah, you were right.
Yeah.
Oh.
That's kind of, I was thinking back between Bob and Dave.
Right.
I was thinking, like, what if Dave did know about that place?
Oh, it was just...
And it was just like, oh, we see this
He
place.
couldn't
And he's
admit
like,
it.
oh, that's my cabin. Ha ha ha. Yeah, these guys are for real.
Yeah, right. But he couldn't tell them.
Yeah, you couldn't tell them.
This was always the case, but now they're being more honest about it.
Right.
They say, I'm glad about that pocket calculator. You're right about that, but we can't tell you literally anything else about whether or not any of your impressions were correct.
That'd be annoying.
Right?
Yeah.
McMonagall was asked to target a set of coordinates where American spy satellites had taken a series of suspicious photographs of a Russian industrial site on the Arctic Circle. This is really cool. At first, McMonagall's results were vague. He sensed the cold and the mountains. Okay, fine. It's the Arctic Circle. So,
It's a lot of that.
right. Atwater decided to show McMonagall the photograph to try to get better results. So he said, okay, fine. Right, it's the Arctic Circle. Just look at what we're trying to view here. The second time, McMonagall saw a noisy building with large scaffolds and flashing blue and white lights like welding torches. In a third session, he saw a submarine being repaired and a larger area containing another submarine, much larger than the first, with 9 or 10 missile tubes. The National Security Council, who had commissioned Grillflame, scoffed at McMonagall's report. They would have known about a submarine as large as the one he was describing, they said. Oh, a giant submarine? Sure, we didn't know about that. No, we know. We would know. We would know if they had a submarine that big. They don't have a submarine that big. Also, the submarine was hundreds of yards inland. So they said, there's no way we can get that submarine to sea.
Yeah.
So the Russians clearly are not building a submarine. You've imagined this whole thing. McMonagall foresaw the process of launching the submarine, though. He saw the Soviets bombing a trench from the shoreline to the building. Satellite photos taken in January 1980 confirmed his report. That's what they did. They built it 100 yards inland, bombed a trench, and then in 1980 they took pictures of 2 submarines docked at this station.
Oh
Wow.
my goodness.
Right?
Crazy.
And how many years later was that after his vision?
It was within 2 years.
Within 2 years. Still, that's ridiculous.
One of the submarines that they saw was very large and had 20 tubes for missiles, and a smaller sub that had been on the site for repairs. The program kept up through the 1970s and 80s, in large part because of Puthoff and Targ's academic rigor. They had papers published in Nature, one of the major journals in science.
Okay.
They didn't have it published like in the forest.
They didn't just stick it to a tree.
No, the journal Nature.
Throw it into the sea.
And they had
With their devices.
And they had a prestigious. They had also had a paper published in a prestigious electrical engineering journal. So these are academics who, by the way, give me grief. Even like religion scholars give me grief when I try to publish papers on psychic mediums and stuff. But these are scientists who are okay, cool. The remote viewing program didn't necessarily thrive through the 1980s, but it became a steady part of the intelligence structure at Defense. It suffered its share of scandals. General Thompson departed as Assistant Chief of Staff for Intelligence in 1981, not because of any scandal, just because, you retire. He was replaced by General William Odom, who was no fan of the paranormal. Uh-oh. More damaging, perhaps, was a paranormal enthusiast in the chain of command between Odom and the remote viewers. His name was General Stubblebine,
What?
I'm sorry?
also known derogatively as General Spoonbender.
I would have just called him by his regular name.
I don't know which one's more ridiculous.
So, in other words, just to get a Stubblebine.
Stubblebine.
We've got changes in the command structure, and that's going to affect us down the line. In the
Not everyone's on
viewing.
the same page anymore.
Only be in the military with that name so that no one makes fun of you.
Stubblebine and become a general. Stubblebine promoted a series of paranormal projects, not all of which had the same pedigree as remote viewing, but they suffered by association. He tried to get civilian psychics involved in Stargate. Bad idea, because they don't have that security clearance. He was forced out of his position after an incident involving a potential remote viewer named Doug Pemberton. While in training, Pemberton harassed a female trainer, and in a separate incident stripped naked and began talking incoherently. He was taken to the psychiatric ward at Walter Reed Army Medical Center, where they discovered that he had an undisclosed psychiatric condition that he was aware of, but had concealed from the remote viewing team. So you're not really allowed to participate in remote viewing if you have diagnosed medical conditions. Psychiatric conditions. So that would have excluded him, but as it stood, the unit had drawn negative attention to itself, and Stubblebine actually had to resign. So
I think they would have tested him at least before, though.
I mean, gotten a report. I don't know.
Like done a
They
test
just took
just
his
to
word
see
for
how
it.
he's doing.
He is in the military. You shouldn't lie to the military.
Even more so.
He was replaced by Major General Harry Soyster, who had a perspective more like Odom's when it came to psychic phenomena, did not buy it. Remote viewers did not seem to be improving much at their craft either, and it was painfully difficult to tell when one was on and one was off. There was an embarrassing instant in which a remote viewer saw a car parked outside of the Capitol building with a nuclear bomb inside during, ready for this, Savannah? Ronald Reagan's State of the Union address.
Oh, God, that's a big
Yeah,
claim.
big day.
Also, this is the first time Ronald Reagan has been mentioned at all.
That is true.
Well, we have been in the 70s. Now we've made it to the 80s.
Okay.
Welcome to Reagan.
So
Is that
Reagan's
copyright?
given his
I
State of the
think it
Union, and there's this psychic remote viewer who says, "Oh no! There's a nuclear bomb outside the Capitol!"
So did they, run him inside or something? Or, they were just
They
whatever?
caused a stir. I don't think it interrupted anything, but it got everyone real weed up. And it turns out, no. This was likely a product of analytical overlap, or AOL. That's what AOL meant before. It meant America Online. It meant analytical overlap. All of the books that I read for this were written before AOL was a thing. So they use AOL without any qualifiers. It's just AOL. And that's when a remote viewer imagines details into the remote viewing that don't come through the viewing process itself. It's when they see something, so say Olivia sees a bouncy castle. And then rather than continuing to remote view the site and go on to see the missile silo, she lets her imagination start functioning, and she sees children in the bouncy castle, and she sees a circus clown walking by, and whatever, things that would fit with a bouncy castle when they're not actually
biases.
there. Yeah, you're using your imagination rather than using the remote viewing process. So that's basically what happened when they saw the Reagan nuclear bomb. In 1984 and 85, Puthoff and Jack Verona, head of the DIA's Scientific and Technical Intelligence Directive, brought the program to members of Congress, the White House, the Navy, the Air Force, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the NSC, the FBI, the CIA, the NSA, the DEA, the Secret Service, Customs, the Coast Guard, and various other military agencies because they were about to be defunded, and an unnamed Pentagon source offered $10 million to keep them going.
Wow.
Its clients were increasingly interested, however, in search problems, which were the hardest to solve. So these are not the same as the problems we've been talking about so far. Everything we've talked about so far, or for the most part, has been there is a target, the target is at these coordinates, tell us about it. Or here's a photograph, tell us more about what's at this photograph. Now they're coming to them and saying, we can't find this thing. Where is it on Earth?
Oh, that's okay.
So that's going to set stuff back a little ways, maybe?
Incredibly difficult to do. Yeah, remote viewers were never very good at this. They were good at the first thing, the thing we've been talking about. They're not good at this other thing.
That's really
Search problems.
Yeah.
So they asked for the location of drug-carrying ships, terrorists, fugitives, on and on. Remote viewers were, again, much more successful at working with defined coordinates than searching for the needle in the haystack. They could see what was at a location if they knew the location, but they couldn't necessarily conjure coordinates themselves. And so the requests for searches lowered their success rates a whole lot. Because they're keeping track. It's the military of their success rate, which was doing really well. And now all these search problems are coming in, and it's not going so well. Funding and support continued to decrease, particularly because, thank you Reagan, the Cold War was drawing to a close.
What a guy.
Right, he single-handedly, through his manliness, brought the Russians to heel.
That's the good old American strength that I love. You know?
Right. Personally went after all the psychic birds.
I mean, maybe that's how he helped. He killed every single bird on Earth and replaced it with spies.
He roboticized them, like in Sonic the Hedgehog.
Yeah. Just like that.
The program survived to be used sparingly during the Gulf War, but was eventually shut down, with interest in remote viewing never rising sufficiently after the end of the Cold War to sustain it. So, could have been Bush or Clinton. Gulf War might have survived the Bush years into Clinton. For Bush 1.
That
not Bush
long?
2. Yeah, I guess it made it into Clinton. There
That's
it is.
like a while.
And
Yeah.
so he defunded our psychics?
Well,
I think Clinton did. Yeah, it was a Democrat after all.
I guess that makes sense.
We're all a little let down. Thought the progressives would be on board with psychics.
But at that point, it was probably, like you said, in their success rate had been going down consistently.
Yeah, and it wasn't just psychic spies. It was in part that spies generally were being defunded as the
Right.
Cold War drew down.
So
So,
they didn't have that.
It
Oh,
could have
this,
been
you know what the
worse.
Soviets are doing? Like, no, I don't think they're hurting
Those-
anybody right now.
Gulf War spies.
It's time for me to get to the moral of today's episode, and in fact, the moral of our entire warfare series. Well, I don't know. The moral of some of our warfare series. So, despite its ultimate demise, for me, the important lesson today is that the CIA and the U.S. military were willing to invest millions of dollars in psychic spying over the course of 2 decades. This is a remarkable endorsement from major institutions at a time period that is too recent to be dismissed for its lack of scientific understanding. We talk about the 19th century a lot.
Yeah.
We're like, oh, those benighted fools of the 19th century with their hoop skirts. But here we are in 1980, 1990. We're wearing plaid and shoulder pads, and we know a bunch of science.
We're like
And
about
watch
to be
Thundercats.
born, man. Yeah, we're all about to be born.
Wow.
Yeah, you guys are about to be born. So
We missed all of it.
this work was being run and promoted by physicists who successfully published on their research in major academic journals. Careful, intelligent, pragmatic people saw the certitude of the mind's ability to function beyond the physical limits of the body to the degree that they attempted with some success to utilize it for top-secret intelligence operations. Right now, I feel like we're in a moment where there's a contingent of people, a growing contingent, that just think this is all nonsense.
Yeah.
But come on.
Right?
Come on.
Yeah.
Physicists, generals, these are the people who endorsed psychics. The history of Stargate offers a counter-narrative to the popular conception of psychic ability as a con intended to separate fools from their money. John Oliver, who I love, the New York Times, who I generally enjoy, it's a love-hate relationship, have both focused attention recently on psychic mediums, making the case that they are all liars and leaving little or no room for the possibility that there could be genuinely gifted people despite the presence of frauds in the culture. Serious people laugh at the idea that sensory input could come from any source other than their 5 physical senses. But psychic ability is, according to the CIA and the U.S. military, a verifiable fact that really has only fallen out of their program because of the end of the Cold War.
Well, why develop something that you can't really defend against?
Right? Well, you can with bouncy houses.
Oh, yeah, that's good.
So,
But then you got to look at all these extra expenses. Why do you get a bouncy house?
right. And you got all the, privates in there bouncing around.
You gonna explain that to your superior?
What is it? What's the pointy part of the gun? The bayonets, which apparently I believe they still have on their
I was
guns.
going to say,
Their bayonets keep poking holes in the bouncy house, and they have to patch them. Okay, so let me get to we're getting to the moral, right?
Yeah.
The question becomes, how do we account for this discrepancy in our culture? The New York Times and HBO are saying psychics are nonsense, but the military said they're not. Psychic ability is, by definition, outside the mainstream. Not everyone possesses it, which we've heard, right? The sense itself, unlike sight or touch, is not a regular part of how we go through life, and we only reach out to it when we ourselves are at our limits, outside the mainstream of our own experience. In the Cold War, the dark shadow of secrecy cast by the Iron Curtain drove intelligence agencies on both sides of the simmering conflict to enlist extreme aids in their effort to find out what the enemy was up to. Psychics became a viable option because we were at the end of our rope. The same can be said for individuals searching for missing children, or soliciting the help of psychics or people who have lost to help people who have lost loved ones, or to attempt to bridge the separation caused by death through the help of a medium. In every case, we're at an extreme. We're at a loss. We don't know what else to do, and so we turn to the extrasensory. These extremes at the outer limits of human experience occupy a small segment of life, or impact a small segment of the population. And so the drive to psychic advice conjures doubt and derision from the masses who, as a rule, can identify with these extremes. Most people haven't lost children, right? Most people are not military generals trying to peer behind the Iron Curtain. It also invites fakers and the self-deluded, rocked by the uncertainty that comes from living along the edges of mainstream experience. But that doesn't mean that the real thing doesn't exist. If we ask the government, perhaps the Russian government as well, psychics do exist and are capable of remarkable, verifiable visions. But since this is outside the limits of we experience in our day-to-day, we're likely to dismiss it or forget it. That is, until the start of our next series, here on Occult Confessions.
Ba-da-bang. No, I watched that John Oliver report actually the other night, which is really weird. It just popped up on my YouTube, and it was a really good report, but it did kind of hurt watching it, being like he's not acknowledging that it could some of it could be real.
He's right. Those people are fakers and liars, but there are not fakers and not liars who.
I guess it's easier because he was trying to prevent people from being scammed.
Yeah.
So I guess it's easier to just be like, none of it's real. Don't do it. Which is like, don't buy any of that crap, but it's okay to think that some of it could be real, I guess. I don't know.
Unless you're the CIA, right?
Yeah.
There's plenty of missing person cases that have been solved just through police finally being like, I guess we'll try a psychic.
Yeah, it happens.
There's like a documentary on either Netflix or HBO about that.
It's called Psych.
Oh, Lord.
Is it?
No,
you can just as
that's
easily
a TV show.
find cases of people who consult psychics and they get bunk advice, or they don't get anything. I spent some time, I listened to as many podcasts as I can because we do this, and I've spent some time listening to the Missing Persons podcast, and almost always some psychic comes in, and sometimes, I listen to them with my wife. She's into this stuff. She's not listening to this podcast.
I was about to say.
No. She listens to those podcasts, and sometimes the psychics say things, and I'm like, that's amazing, but it still doesn't answer the question. So there you are. All right, let's close this one up and move over into our order of confessors. All right, Olivia, let's hear all about this reptilian business, this cult. So you have looked into this.
What do we want to know? Exactly. There's a lot of detail.
Wait, you have answers?
I don't know what I know. Yeah.
Yeah. What does his
what
reptilian belief inform his suicide?
They were both a part of this. She says it's not a cult, but it was like an online cult done by this YouTuber. Her name was Sherry Shriner, I believe.
She was in charge of the cult.
Yeah, well, she had this YouTube account. So she says it wasn't a cult. It's just a bunch of her,
It's
fans.
just YouTube.
Yeah.
That's what we say about this podcast.
You can, you can look her up on YouTube, and she just has insane videos on, reptilian theory. Not even in a way that I would entertain.
Oh, really? It's beyond you.
Well,
that's deep stuff.
She ended up turning against the girlfriend, basically, because the girlfriend made a post about liking steak tartare, basically, and liking exotic food. But Sherry Shriner would say that raw meat, that's a sign of reptilian. So
she believed that
she thought the girlfriend was a reptilian. So she kept trying to tell the guy, Mineo, I don't know how to say his last name, but she kept telling him, you got to get away from your girlfriend. And the guy was like, no, they were together for so long that, and she had kids, so they called each other husband and wife, even though they weren't married.
Wow.
So he was like, stay away from my wife, and they ended up separating from the online cult, but they were getting so harassed by, the girl was constantly, the followers were coming at her because they were all like, you're a reptilian. So now, I'm pretty sure Sherry Shriner, I couldn't find this, but I thought that she died. I'm pretty sure she died, a year after he died, basically. But I'm not sure exactly, but I'm pretty sure. But you can still look up her YouTube videos. But she claimed that, she had nothing to do with it, obviously. But
I still don't understand why he killed himself.
Yeah.
So
they were being harassed.
The girl, what's tricky is the girlfriend. I was looking at a bunch of her statements, and one of the things that was really important to the case was this girl didn't have any prior. She was a mom of 3. She even in the 911 call, straight up said, I shot my boyfriend. He had a gun to his head. She made it sound I guess he was bipolar, or she was bipolar, or someone was bipolar and was off their meds, is what I read in another article. But I don't know, that's only one article that I see that.
So this was just sort of exacerbating the situation.
Yeah, the girlfriend made it sound like he was having a breakdown, not being a part of the group anymore, having his lady targeted, he was losing his mind. She said that he was teaching her how to use a gun for her own protection, against people, and from the Shrinerites is what they call themselves, I think, the followers of Sherry. But yeah, and then he was teaching her, and then turned the gun on him, and then made her pull the trigger, is her story. But
well, there you go, Jenica.
Yeah.
Thanks for that interesting tale.
Yeah.
That's sad.
That is sad.
3rd-degree murder is what she got charged with, the lady. But But yeah, the Sherry, I'm pretty sure is dead, so.
All right.
I don't know.
All right, I gotta say, we have had an excellent response from our confessors in the last 2 weeks since we finished. I think it was the combination of the Crowley episode and then the Magical Battle of Britain, and I think this is going to be a great conclusion to the series and to those episodes. But we've been hearing from so many people, and they've been giving us so much love. Alexis Jade, lovely, says that both A+ and love it.
Oh, is that how she spells her name?
Yeah, isn't that something?
I like
Alexis.
that. Yeah. It's
She
like
says,
elixir.
Every episode was gold, she says.
Aw, that's awesome.
You're gold.
Gold is valuable.
You're gold.
Girl.
You're gold, Alexis.
Yeah.
Nico, if you don't know, finished every episode, and I love this. He sings Bree's metal riff to his friends who have no idea what's going on. He posted this on our iTunes page. He put this all up there.
That's awesome.
And okay, so now I gotta say before we go on with these, I feel very responsible now, don't you guys? People are listening to every episode.
Yeah, that scares me a
Like
little.
40 hours of us.
I've said some bad things.
I too feel like I've said something.
We need to keep our game tight. Is that how you keep it? You
Keep it tight.
Tight. Keep our because we got people going through all episodes. These were not the first. These won't be the last.
I hope not.
Wise
Now,
words.
don't listen to me. No one does.
Oh, that's a mood.
That's their username? Oh my god.
He and I'm listening. I'm listening.
Oh, we are listening.
Don't listen.
And they're listening.
As a fan of history and the cult, Don't Listen says, Don't Listen finds us both entertaining and well researched.
Oh wow.
Aw,
Yeah, very
We're
nice.
listening.
Very nice.
We're listening.
Eric
And
Acton.
heard.
Yes, listened and heard. Eric Acton Jr. is confirming that we have Google listeners. So we've got a couple of folks on Facebook
Who knew?
giving us some of that Facebook love. I just have a private message for Eric. Everyone else can tune out. Demonology is about 3 episodes away now, Eric, and we will be following that closely by Exorcism.
Yeah.
The series, everyone can listen now. The series, Eric asked about that. So the series for healing is going to go a little something like this. I'm still tweaking it, but we're going to start with shamanism. Then we're going to go to Jesus of Nazareth and his magical abilities and healing. And then we're going to go to demonology and exorcism in that order. Okay. I also want to give a shout out to some friends we've heard from on Instagram recently. Our Lovecraft fan Connor McKenzie's is we're gonna have an episode for him coming up in Halloween. We're gonna do a Lovecraft episode. Also, Wald Trom, who had to pull over his car because he's found the nonsense portions of our podcast so amusing.
Oh, what?
Oh.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
We're gonna cause an accident. They're so funny.
No, he's pulling over. He's fine.
He's
just pull over.
responsible.
Yeah, that's
He's
good. That's awesome.
now we don't think we're that funny, but apparently
Savannah thinks she's that.
No.
Wald Trom he's just our kind of people. Wald,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That's all it is. Humor is very subjective, and we have been hearing from folks who aren't quite getting our quirky sense of humor.
Hate on me.
It's just that he's our kind of people, and we're your kind of people, Wald. We're glad to have you. Also, Riley K. Jax K.
Whoa.
K.
Sent us a heart in our DMs. She slid into our DMs.
Slid into our DMs.
Yeah. Hey, what are DMs, by the way? What is-
Direct messages.
Direct message.
Oh, I never knew what
You
that. I
old
don't know what that
person,
meant. I
you.
know.
She direct messaged
Nice.
us.
I know, just to put a finer point on this, we are a quirky kind of podcast. We are. We chant at the beginning, and we talk about these quirky subjects.
We chant at the end, too.
We chant all the time.
chant.
So all this feedback we've been getting, it means a lot to us. We know when we're talking to you, however you find us, that we're communicating with kindred spirits, and that's a lot of fun. So please feel free, reach out to us, send us messages. I'm thrilled to talk to all of you, Shannon and Olivia and everybody. We just love to respond.
Get on our Insta and talk to us.
Slide into my direct
DMs.
messages.
Slide right on in.
James is actually wearing a shirt from Dematha Catholic. It says DM right on there.
Yes, it does.
Don't
Wow.
slide into their DMs.
No.
Ours.
I mean, do it.
well, if they have DMs, I mean,
I don't know.
they might want to talk to you. I don't know.
Olivia, get us out of here.
I hereby adjourn and declare closed this meeting of the Secret Order of Alchemical Actors till such a time as we get together and do it again.
We want to thank Brandon Walls for doing our brief history and playing the role of Pat Price, and also Sean Priest, who was our McGonagall today.
Our Harry Potter character.
Oh no.
I had to say it. Somebody is out there thinking, are they talking about the Harry Potter person the whole time?
Yep.
I don't even know Harry Potter that well. But
And
I
now
know
they've
that name.
thought about it the entire
It's
time.
McGonagall.
until
Is that
now.
Maggie Smith, Dame Maggie
Yeah.
Smith?
Yeah.
So, no, we've not been talking about Maggie Smith.
But if you'd
British
like to
actress
imagine
Maggie Smith.
Maggie Smith in that
Yeah,
role,
feel free.
yeah,
Feel
She was
free.
phenomenal.
it's
by the way.
encouraged.
Maggie Smith is a male psychic spy in the Cold War.
She could do it.
I wish we should work on that screenplay.
Let's DM her.
Joining me around the circle, Olivia Literal as usual.
Bye.
Captain of the table, James Kapelanges.
Farewell and be safe.
And Savannah Verrett, who we didn't say was the sister of the 84th degree because we were so busy loving or fearing Reagan. I don't know, what were we doing at the beginning there?
No, I don't even know. Trying to expose him because everybody needs to know about the genius of making birds spies, but also needs to be wary of birds being spies because the bourgeoisie is after us.
Yes, those bourgeoisies, of which we are not a part.
It's so... I had to look up what the bourgeoisie was when I heard that because I was like, what the hell is the bourgeoisie?
We should have learned it in Rob's class.
Well,
Illuminati.
I didn't take very good notes. So-
On my bourgeoisie day.
Every day.
All right, let's talk about... So I did talk a bit about the next series. We are moving on. This is the end of our Magical Warfare series. Aww.
We're to rest.
It's been a good run. It's time to move on, though, to spiritual healing. And we're meaning by this term both physical healing through supernatural means and the healing of the spirit in some way. So that's why we will be talking about both shamanism and Jesus's healings in the Bible and exorcism and demonology. All these various ways that the mind and body can be healed using spiritual power. We're going to do an episode on Chinese medicine as well, and we're going to get around to some American spiritual healing, which was taking place in the 19th century, and we're going to talk a bit about how Christian Science works.
Love that for us.
Not Scientology, Christian, Mary Baker Eddy. It'll be a good time. So, after that, we're going to go to the Apocalypse series. That's how we're closing out this year, is the Apocalypse
that
series.
sounds fun.
So, lots of fun things to come. Thank you all for being with us. We are so grateful to have you as our confessors.
We love you.
We'll catch you next time here on Occult Confessions.